it became pretty obvious that the death in the bunker was nothing but, well, fiction.
History often overlooks those who stood quietly on the sidelines, people whose stories never made the headlines but who witnessed everything unfold. Gretl Braun was one of them. She wasn't just Eva Braun's sister or Adolf Hitler's sister-in-law for a brief moment. She was a silent observer of some of the darkest days in modern history. For decades, she stayed quiet. But near the end of her life, Gretl finally broke her silence, and what she revealed shook the long-standing narrative about Hitler's final days. Gretl's ties to the Nazi regime didn't come from politics or military power. They came from family. Born in 1915, she grew up beside Eva, watching as her sister fell deeper into the orbit of Adolf Hitler. What started as a strange relationship eventually turned into something far more dangerous, and Gretl was never far from it. She visited Hitler's secluded retreats, attended staged photo ops, and lived within the elite circles of Nazi Germany. Though she wasn't politically involved, she was close enough to see how deep the darkness went. In 1944, Gretl married SS officer Hermann Fegelein, a high-ranking official who worked closely with Heinrich Himmler. The marriage wasn't built on love, it was arranged, political, and strategic. Hitler himself gave the blessing, reinforcing just how controlled Gretl's life had become. He micromanaged everything, from where she lived to whom she was allowed to marry. Fegelein's role in her life wasn't about romance. It was about reinforcing loyalty to a regime that was already collapsing. But when the war turned against Germany, Fegelein bailed. He was caught trying to flee Berlin, disguised in civilian clothes, carrying stolen cash and jewels. His desertion was unforgivable in Hitler's eyes, and he was quietly executed, likely without trial. Gretl, pregnant and alone, received no closure. No grave to mourn at. Just silence. Just days later, as Hitler and Eva took their own lives in the bunker, Gretl gave birth to a daughter she named Eva Barbara, a quiet tribute to the sister she had just lost. Gretl had spent her final weeks of the war at the Berghof, Hitler's once glamorous mountain retreat. It had once hosted lavish parties, grand speeches, and endless propaganda. But by 1945, it was a ghost house. The music had stopped, the windows stayed shut, and the grandeur had faded into silence. Women like Gretl and Eva were always in the background, seen but not heard, expected to smile and stay invisible while the men made decisions that would destroy millions of lives. Over time, Gretl noticed how much Eva had changed. The laughter wasn't real anymore. She spent more time by the window, staring at nothing, waiting for something that never came. Hitler's attention was fleeting, cold, and controlling. And though Gretl tried to keep her sister afloat emotionally, she couldn't stop what was coming. When she left the Berghof in early 1945, she didn't know it would be the last time she'd ever see her sister alive. A few days before Eva died, Gretl received a letter. It wasn't dramatic or panicked, it was heartbreakingly calm. Eva asked her to burn sensitive documents but to keep their personal letters. That request said everything. There was no plea for rescue. No hope. Just quiet acceptance. Eva had made peace with the end, and the letter showed it. Years passed. Gretl changed her name and disappeared from public life. She raised her daughter in privacy and silence, trying to protect her from a past soaked in shame. But tragedy followed. Eva Barbara later died by suicide after a devastating car accident. Gretl, now a grieving mother and widow, kept her silence for decades. But as illness took hold and her time grew short, she decided the world needed to hear what really happened. She left behind a handwritten letter, trembling but honest. In it, she described Hitler's final days not as some grand moment of defiance, but as a collapse into madness. The man who once terrified the world had become a ghost, rambling, broken, and lost in delusion. Eva, Gretl revealed, hadn't wanted to die. She was terrified, isolated, and emotionally trapped. Her decision to stay in the bunker wasn't loyalty. It was despair. The letter shattered the myth. Eva had shown signs of breaking long before the end, holding on to old photos, avoiding eye contact, going quiet for days at a time. Gretel believed her sister's last thoughts weren't about Hitler at all. They were about her family, maybe even Gretel herself. She imagined Eva holding their photograph before taking the cyanide, a small gesture of connection in a place where hope had already died. Gretel's final words were simple but powerful. She hadn't been in the bunker that day, but she had carried the pain with her every day since. And now, after decades of silence, she wanted the world to know what really happened.